Okay, just going live. Great, we're live now.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We will shortly be starting our third seminar about savings, accounts, and investments. We're just going to give everyone another 2 minutes to tune in, and then we will get going. As many of you may be aware, we have a guest speaker this evening talking about investments, who my colleague Sarah will introduce fully when she's finished her talk. So yeah, just bear with us. Okay, so as always, please stick any questions or queries that you have in the comments section on Facebook. I will be keenly monitoring it throughout the whole session, and I will pass on the questions and highlight them to our speakers, who will hopefully be able to either address them during the session at the end or in the day or so afterwards if we don't get them during the session. Okay, so as always, it is an absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Sarah Asher. She is doing the academic foundation program in the Oxford Deanery and is also a chartered accountant. So we're very lucky to have her this evening. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, James. So, hi everyone. This is our third installment. We are talking about savings accounts and investments today. So I'm going to go through savings accounts first. It's going to be a whistle-stop tour on the different types of savings accounts. It's going to be quite basic. It's aimed at people who don't actually know very much about this at all. And I'll be doing something a bit more detailed later on. I'm just putting down the groundwork with all the basics, and then we're going to go to stuff that's more complex later. I'm also, after my talk, will be introducing Ibrahim, who's from Charles University in Prague, originally from the UK, and he'll be talking about investments. So stay tuned for that, won't be long at all. So I'm going to jump straight into our content. So we're going to talk about why you should have a savings account, what types of savings accounts there are, pros, cons of each, and the key things you need to keep in mind. And then we'll be going down to investments and why invest. So this is me, we're best friends by now. I'm just going to jump straight through. Okay, so why have a savings account? So 3 things. The savings account acts as a separate pot that is less likely for you to touch if you can't really see the money there in your current account. It means that if you're saving up for something specific, you're putting that money away, squirreling that money away in a safe place, and you're less likely to touch it. In the good old days, you could earn interest on this balance. You can earn interest now, it's just not really very good. It used to be really quite useful to put your money away in a savings account, and you'd end up making quite a lot of interest on that. And the best part about that was you used to make interest that then got added to your balance and you made more interest on it, so compound interest. At the moment, interest rates aren't that great, so you are looking for a kind of savings account that gives you a little bit of payback, but is also suits your needs. And then I'll be talking about a specific type of savings account called a lifetime ISA, which attracts a 25% government bonus at the end of it. So first of all, these are the different types I'll be talking about: instant access savings accounts, cash ISAs, fixed term savings accounts, premium bonds, lifetime ISAs, stocks and shares ISAs. So the most basic savings account you can get is an instant access savings account. Currently, it acts kind of like another current account because of how low the interest rates are. But normally it would give you a little bit more interest on your balance, so you'd be more tempted to leave your money in there for longer, because the longer you left your money untouched, the more interest you'd earn, the more money your money would make. With an instant access savings account, there's usually no fee you have to pay for it. There's no penalty for taking out your money whenever you want, and you can get the money instantly. You don't have to apply to take it out, which you do with some savings accounts. Its only issue is that it's not really maximizing your savings. You can do a lot more with your savings than pop it in a separate pot. Next, fixed term savings. So fixed terms are a savings account where you agree to lock your money away for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. And because you're locking your money away and basically promising that you're not going to touch it, that reliability earns you a bit of extra interest that you wouldn't get on an instant access savings account. At the moment, I think a good interest rate would be 1.05%. Normally, these used to be a lot better. I'm hoping that they start to improve as the economy improves as well. And the problem with these, though, is that you can incur penalties for accessing your money early. So if you break the term and you want to come and take your money out, you can either end up forfeiting the interest you've earned and end up paying penalties for accessing your money early and breaking the terms of the savings account. The best way to use these is if you have a few £1,000s, a few £100 that you can just leave untouched for a fixed period of time. It means that that's sitting there earning you a little bit of extra money through interest. And the benefit of it would be better interest rates. So ISAs, there are 5 types of ISAs. I'm only going to be talking about 3. The cash ISA is probably the one that most people know about. It acts as a normal savings account. They have normally relatively good interest rates compared to the rest of the market. It's not that they have any worse off interest rates because of being a cash ISA. The other benefit of them is that all the interest that you earn in a cash ISA and every other type of ISA is tax-free. So the interest isn't subject to tax. The limit for depositing in all types of ISAs across the board is £20,000 in one tax year, which means if you have a cash ISA and if you have a stocks and shares ISA, you can deposit £20,000 across the 2 of them in one tax year. And that's the maximum you're allowed to save. There's no risk to your savings in a cash ISA because it's not being invested anywhere. There are different types of cash ISAs. So ones that you can access really easily and just take your money straight out. There's pitfalls there with your £20,000 deposit limit is counted every time you make a deposit. So you can't take some money out and then redeposit it and not incur your £20,000 limit. So you put in £5,000, you take out £1,000, and then you put in £1,000 to replace it. You've technically put in £6,000 as part of your allowance. Then you can have cash ISAs that are fixed term and cash ISAs that are limited access, which might give you slightly better interest rates. All of them, the interest is tax-free. Interest rates can be slightly higher for the fixed term or the limited access ones. But the thing to remember about ISAs, and this is all the different types of ISAs, is that you can only open one type of ISA in any tax year. There's no limit to the amount of ISAs you can hold. So say like one tax year you open a cash ISA, the next tax year you open a stocks and shares ISA, the next tax year you open another cash ISA. There's no limit to how many you have, but you can only deposit in one type of ISA per cash year. One type of ISA per tax year, sorry. So it means that in one tax year, you can only deposit in one of your cash ISAs, you can only deposit in one of your stocks and shares ISAs, and you can only deposit in one of your lifetime ISAs, or the other 2 ISAs that I'm not going to be talking about. And some of them have limits as well, so it's worth checking out what you're looking at. Next, stocks and shares ISAs. So Ibrahim will be able to tell us a little bit more about these than I can, so I'll just give you the basics. So this is a type of savings account that has risk attached to it. Your money that you're putting into this ISA is going to be invested in stocks and shares. Either those stocks and shares form part of a portfolio of the provider with which you've got your ISA, or you select your own stocks and shares to invest in. It means that you could end up having a return that's much, much higher than the current interest rates. So there's that pro there, but the con is you can end up losing money as well. Sorry about the sunshine situation. Move a little bit, there we go. So the things with stocks and shares ISAs is that it's, again, part of your £20,000 annual limit of deposits, but any interest that you earn from your stocks and shares ISA is completely tax-free, which means if you invest it, it does extremely well, you make a huge amount of interest on it, that's going to be tax-free. The only thing to remember is that there is risk attached to it. So don't put your life savings in there where you can't live without them. It's very important to make sure you do things safely and with as little risk as possible. And they may be subject, well, they actually will be subject to a fee, because running a stocks and shares ISA is expensive. The provider needs to do this for you, and they will need to purchase the stocks and shares on your behalf. So that incurs a fee. So stocks and shares ISA can incur a small fee as well. Okay, lifetime ISA. So there's the lifetime ISA available at the moment. Before this, a help to buy ISA was also available, but you can't get a help to buy ISA anymore. Some of you might still have a help to buy ISA. So if you have any questions about this, please feel free to pop them in the comments, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions about them. But I'm going to focus on lifetime ISAs at the moment because they're the products that's currently available. So a lifetime ISA is a type of ISA with a maximum deposit limit of £4,000 per year. You then, at the end of your term, which is either when you're buying your first home, when you are 60 years of age, or if you have a terminal illness with less than 12 months to live, you get a 25% bonus from the government on the balance in your account up to a maximum of £33,000. The whole purpose of a lifetime ISA is to help people get on the property ladder and or to help them save for their older age. So the lifetime ISAs come with a lot of rules attached to them. They're worth having because you get that 25% bonus at the end, but you can incur a 25% penalty charge for withdrawing from your ISA without, which isn't one of the 3 reasons I just explained. You have to be between the age of 18 to 40 to open one, and you can save into it up until you're 50 years old. You then continue to collect interest, but not bonus, on the balance that's in the account up until you're 60 years old. That's when you can cash in your ISA. The money is locked away for a long time, and you need to keep that in mind. It is £4,000 a year rather than, say, you putting all your savings in there. So there is that, but it is also making sure that you shouldn't have any reason really to touch that money until you are 60 years old or buying your first home. And God forbid, the illness part. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Okay, premium bonds. So the reason I'm talking about these is because they are they're a risk-free, really easy to access, easy to use product where you purchase bonds from National Savings and Investments. And rather than earning interest, your bonds, the more bonds you have, the more entries you have into their prize draw. You're entered into a prize draw every month, and you can win a sum of money anywhere between £25 to £1 million, and all of those winnings are tax-free. So people like to use premium bonds when they have a little bit of extra money, they've maximized their current savings products, and it's just a nice safe place to keep your money where you have a chance of winning a prize. You know, the likelihood of winning a grand prize is low, but at least there's no risk to your money. And say you win a few £25 checks in the year, that's still better than current interest rates at the moment. So actually you're not doing too badly. Unfortunately, with this, there's no guaranteed returns. So you could win nothing, and there's no regular return on your investments. Unlikely to win large amounts. You're not earning any interest. But the good thing about this is it's really easy to access. They're easy to cash in. It just takes a few days for the money to come back into your account. You have more odds of winning the more bonds you have, and everything's tax-free. Okay, so just some key points I'd like you to remember when you're looking at savings accounts. Main thing is, how often do you need to access your money? If you think you're going to need to access your money in 6 months' time, don't get something that's fixed term or has limited withdrawals. Make sure that you've got the access level that you need so that you're not incurring any penalties or not wasting any fee on accessing your money. How long can you live without the money? So, for example, with the lifetime ISA, can you really go with that £4,000 every year? Most, medical students, that's actually quite hard to save at the moment. So I wouldn't maximize putting £4,000 in your lifetime ISA too early, because if you need that money later on, you'll incur a penalty charge. Look at the interest rates. Sadly, interest rates at the moment aren't great. So just sort of, if you've got money that you can lock away for a period of time, you might get a bit of a better interest rate there. But look at the interest rate and don't be tempted by high interest rates, because and make sure you know what's coming with that high interest rate. It might be stringent rules about how you can access your money, how long it's locked away for, or that you might have to put a specific balance in. And just check the risk involved. So in terms of stocks and shares ISA, you've got risk involved there. Just make sure you have an awareness of what your risk appetite is. How much are you willing to win or lose? How much are you willing to put into this and not be upset or emotional about? And how likely are you to do that based on how diversified a portfolio is, even if that's from the provider or your own portfolio that you researched, which is Ibrahim's department. So this is great timing for me. So I'm going to pass you over to Ibrahim. He is a second-year medical student at Charles University in Prague. He is a finance-savvy investor. He's been investing since 2016. And I'm super interested to hear his talk. So over to you.
Hi, thanks very much, Dr. Tyler. I'm going to try and see if I can share my screen here.
I can share yours for you.
Yes, please.
And then I'm going to try, I can either just change the slides for you, so you can just say next and I'll change the slides.
Yeah, sure. That's great. So as she said, I'm a finance savvy individual. And today I'm going to talk about a brief insight into investing. I can talk for days and days about investing, but unfortunately time is of the essence. So this is like a brief overview of investing, and hopefully I'll be allowed to do some subsequent videos on individual investments and get into a bit more of a nitty gritty. So let's start off. What is an investment? Next, please, Sarah. So an investment is basically an asset which you can buy or acquire, and it can do one of two things or both. It can generate you an income, or it can appreciate, which basically means it can increase in value. And I think the best example to use here is buying a house. When you buy a house, more often than not, it will increase in value over 5-10 years. And in that time period, if you decide to rent out that house, you are then creating an income as well. So that's kind of the best way to describe it. So property is one of the many investment types you can do, but I'm sure when it comes to investments, the most familiar one that everyone's minds tend to go to is towards the stock market. So Sarah, if you would do the next slide, please. So when it comes to investing and the stock market and the property, there's often been a misconception that only the wealthy can do it, only the rich people can invest. And that was the case for the past decades. Like for the past 10-20 years, investing was really kind of an exclusive thing that you could only do by going to one of these investment banking firms, or you know someone who knew someone who knew someone else, which was often daunting towards the average individual. However, in the past 10 years, with the introduction of something called zero commission trading apps, which are basically apps which are very accessible and you can easily buy a stock in a matter of minutes. So this is now changing the game, yet people don't have enough information, or this ingrained misconception is still not leaving the system in terms of, I was reading an article by Forbes a few weeks ago, and it says only 2 to 5% of people within the UK invest, which was quite a shocking figure, to say the least. Hopefully, by the end of my talking, can increase that number. So if you can do the next slide, please. Great. So when it comes to investing, we have to ask ourselves, why should one invest? Why should we invest? What's the point? And for each person, there's generally a different reason. And I'll talk about myself first before I can explain some of the other reasons. But for me, it's to do with wealth and creating generational wealth, which basically means any money that I gain in my lifetime, I can pass on to my children or can pass on to friends and family. It's just something that's kind of generally been used for, in the UK, we call it aristocrats. They normally have that kind of generational wealth that can be passed down. And I think these investing trading apps are changing the game of who can do this. And I'm sure you've heard me mention investing quite a few times now. And I want to just draw the line or a distinction between investing and trading. Very often you can see them come into hand in hand in conversation, but they're actually two different things. One is a lot riskier than the other. And as Simon mentioned in the previous PowerPoint, you can lose a lot of money. However, when it comes to losing a lot of money, it's generally to do with trading, because trading is mainly focused on short-term goals, using something called leverage, which I'll explain a bit later on. But if you're going to lose money, it's going to be done via trading. Whereas investing, I like to think of it as a bit contrary to what Cyrus said. I think investing is generally risk-free, dependent on two things. And these two things are the money that you put into investments is money that you don't need in the next year, 2 years, 3 years. It's money that we can, put away and don't need. And the second thing is you have to be, what's the word? I'll come back to that part in the second part in a minute once I find a proper way to formulate it. But in the meantime, if you can go on to the next slide. So yeah, when should we start investing? As the slide says, immediately. There are generally two rules when it comes to investing. There was a quote by one of the most famous investors. I'm sure everyone knows the name Warren Buffett. Now, the quote that stuck with me by him is that there are two times we can invest. The best time was in fact 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. Because let's say it's 2030, it's 10 years have gone, and you're there thinking, oh, I wish I would have invested now, or it came in 2021. There's loads of stocks that are coming to the market new that are, providing many benefits to society as a whole that I can see personally can do well in 10, 20 years. Even though now, they're kind of a baby company or they're not performing as strong as the big dogs, so to say. These are companies that can create a lot of wealth in these 5, 10 years time. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned at the beginning house, and I mentioned stocks as well, but there are actually a multitude of types of investments that you can do. And hopefully, if I'm allowed to, in subsequent videos, I can talk about each one of these individually. But we have stocks, we have real estate, we have something called mutual funds, which is basically similar to what Cyrus was saying with the stocks and shares ISA. This is where you can give money to a certain company, they can put it into a fund, which is basically a collection of different types of stocks. Can be 30, can be 40 different types of stocks. And they're often quite good because there's very minimal risk. However, there's also minimum gain as well. And one of the main ones on this pie chart here that the rich like to do is art. Art is like a wonderful way of allocating your money because when it comes to investing itself, back to our early question of why should we invest? And it comes down to what Simon was saying in terms of interest rates, money in the bank. It's just not doing much anymore. And one of the main reasons for this is inflation. I'm sure you might have heard it in the news. or just as you're reading the articles or something like that. So what is inflation and how can it generally impact regular money in the bank? I think the best way to describe it is via two examples. £1,000 in the bank in 2010 could get you a lot more than £1,000 can at the moment. And the best way to explain that is if you're in the UK, I'm sure you've all heard of the Freddo bar, which was like a very popular chocolate as a child. When I was young, it used to cost 5p just to buy this chocolate. But now go into the shops and it's now 30p. Now, even though, you know, it doesn't seem like a large amount, 25p increase, when that gets translated into the big money, for example, that's like saying 5 million to 30 million or 5 billion to 30 billion. It's a lot in 10 years' time. Whereas assets such as stocks and real estate, even though they are sometimes impacted by inflation or other external market factors, generally it's not as bad as if money was sitting in an account, which goes contrary to what Saira was saying, because she was advocating for placing your money in your bank. And yeah, that's good. But for me personally, money in the bank is becoming kind of obsolete in terms of its use, in terms of its value. As Sarah mentioned, the interest rates are just ridiculously low at 1%, 1.05%. It's just not worth it compared to when you put it into something like stocks. And as Sarah mentioned, risk. Risk is a very big thing to talk about when it comes to investments, especially when it comes to stocks. But what you have to understand is stocks go up and they go down. But when we zoom out for the past 10, 20 years, stocks have increased. The journey of increasing is turbulent. It's like a roller coaster going up and down, but a final destination is always higher than when we first started. So if you're willing to put money away for 10, 15 years, I can almost 95%, 99% guarantee that in 10, 25 years time, you'll be in a lot more profit than if it was to be stuck in a bank. Right, Sarah, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this a bit later on because what time is it? Pacific time, so it's 8:30. We've got a good amount of time left, so I can carry on talking. Let's go back. Can you go back to the slide of which slide? Go back to the content slide, please. So I've covered briefly each of these things, but I want to delve a bit more into the why and the when. I was speaking to Saira earlier on before we went live, and she was mentioning that she herself is dabbling into investing. She's just opened up an account and she's just bought a small amount of shares. And I said to her, that's the best thing you can do, because often the first thing is starting. Starting is often the hardest thing anyone can do. As I said, it can be due to the misconceptions that have been embedded in our society, that saying stocks are risky, you're almost guaranteed to lose money. And it's just not the case anymore if you are smart and knowledgeable about what you're doing. So the first hard part is starting. And the second hard part is being consistent. And by consistent, I mean, if you're serious about creating money, creating wealth after a long time, you can't just buy one share and leave it be. You can, what I like to do personally is have a set amount of my normal income. So this is like from a job. So if you're a doctor, you've got a salary each month. After you've taken away your bills, your expenses, you're left with what you would put into your savings. So I would personally, what I normally do, would take a percentage of that each month and put it in to an investment portfolio, either in stocks or if you're creating a property portfolio into property as well, and doing that monthly. And if you do that monthly, after 5 years' time, not only are you going to have a large portfolio, you're going to have a large percentage gain due to the amount you invest in the first place. Okay, the next part I want to talk about is another kind of phrase / quote that we use. I saw one of the questions says something, I presume, about cryptocurrency. It seems to be quite a big trend now, cryptocurrency. Rightly so, it's made a lot of people rich. And the phrase that I want to mention is, if you have, so this is how it goes. If you have £200, invest into crypto. If you have less than £20,000, invest into stocks. And if you have more than £20,000, invest into property. And then once you get above property, that's when you can start buying art and all the rest of it. So I think I have time to briefly mention cryptocurrency due to one of the questions. Let me try and explain it in the simplest way. So cryptocurrency, it's another asset that you can buy, similar to stocks, but it has a different function. And the reason why it's becoming a bit popular at the moment is because of the high prices that it's reaching. But what one has to understand about cryptocurrency is that it's generally a 4-year cycle. And by that, I mean, if we take Bitcoin, for example, which is the main cryptocurrency that everyone's more or less heard of, it's a 4-year cycle. And by that, every 4 years, the price of Bitcoin reaches a new all-time high. But after it's reached that all-time high, it then spends the next 3 years declining by 80–90% of its value before increasing to a new all-time high after 4 years' time. So in 2017, Bitcoin was all the hype again. So I think one of the questions was saying, what's the best way to maximize gains on crypto? And there's a general rule of thumb that I like to use. So whenever you find a cryptocurrency that you like, you first put in money that you're willing to lose. And by lose, I mean you've lost it over for 3 years. It will increase again after 4 years, but you've lost it in terms of you can't draw it out immediately. So that's what I mean by putting in money that you're willing to lose or / not use for a long time. Once you've done that, you find a good coin, and if it increases, let's say 40%, that's a threshold that I like to use. If it increases by 40%, you should take out your original investment. And that means you're playing with the profit. That takes away all the risk. Your original investment is out, you're now playing with profit. Any money that's on there is profit made. So that's generally the best way to maximize gains on cryptocurrency. That can be applied to all coins across the board. And so that's it for cryptocurrency. I think that's everything on my end. I want to end on a quote, actually. We are in a ever-changing, evolving, chaotic world, moving at a very fast pace in terms of technology, in terms of society as a whole. It's very chaotic. However, among all this chaos, there is always opportunity to make wealth. So I hope you enjoyed my little brief insight into investing. I'm sure it was also quite chaotic as well, due to my tangents here and there. But hopefully, in subsequent videos, we can pinpoint just one investment type and talk about it a lot more. So thank you very much, and I'll give it back to Cyber or to James.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. That was really, really interesting. You are so passionate about the subject, and that definitely comes across. And that was really interesting. I didn't actually know about the difference between the trading and the investing and all that kind of stuff. And I actually really like that we have quite different views on them, and it'd be quite useful to explore. I think I sound quite risk averse, and you the opposite. But that was really, really useful. James, do we have any questions in the comments that we need to action before we finish off?
Yes, we do. Ibrahim actually addressed the first one about cryptocurrency very well. Let me just get the others up. So, the next question from Neil was, in the lifetime ISA, is the 25% bonus added each tax year or only when you add money to the account?
So the 25% bonus is added at the end of the term. So whenever you're cashing in the ISA. So if you cash in the ISA because you're buying your first home, the 25% bonus will be given to you then based on the balance that's in your account at the time. If you're cashing in your ISA when you've turned 60 years old, again, that's when you'll receive your 25% bonus on the balance in your account at the time. You will have an interest rate attached to that account, and that interest rate can either be monthly or annual based on the type of product you've selected. But the interest rate is different from the 25% bonus.
Okay, so hopefully that answered your question, Neil. The next one is from Zuhaib, and they ask, tax-wise, any plans, and how would you minimize capital gains tax?
Wow, okay. So capital gains tax is not something you think you need to worry about just yet. It's not really something you'll incur in your ISA or savings. It's something you're more likely to incur when you're selling property. That's where you get hit by capital gains tax. So if you're selling art, property, things like that, minimizing capital gains tax is a fun business, between a very fine line between tax avoidance and tax evasion, which I would highly suggest you had an accountant for. When you're doing capital gains tax, you have to have an independent valuation done of the thing you are selling or buying. And because of that, you can't really design what capital gains you will be spending or what capital gains you will incur. It's very much out of our hands with that one. I can talk about that in another video, actually. I think that's worth doing that actually with Ibrahim as well, because I think you can incur capital gains when shares are passed between family members, aren't they? So we can have a chat about that. But thank you for that question. I think that's really useful to know that that's something you'd like me to talk about.
Okay, and then another question from Zuhaib. So if we use an app to access our ISA, do we not have to pay management fees?
So it depends on the type of ISA you've got. If it is a instant access ISA or a cash ISA, then it's up to the provider whether they charge you a fee or not. Normally they don't. I'm pretty sure all stocks and shares ISA incur a fee because they require someone to manage it. They require it to be looked after and curated. Therefore, you will have a different type of fee across the different providers, but you will most likely incur a fee regardless of if it's a high street bank or an app. Okay, so hopefully we've been able to answer all of your questions. So scrolling down, we have another one. How many lifetime ISAs can you have? You can have one lifetime ISA. You can, however, if you're buying your first home with a partner who also has never bought a home before and has their own lifetime ISA, you can combine them, which means you will get 25% on each of your balances, and you can use that to buy your first home together. Okay, and this one I believe is for Ibrahim. So how does one become more knowledgeable and smart about investments such as stocks, mutual funds, and crypto?
Right, great question. I'm going to talk about my experience first. I think we have a bit of time. So as I mentioned, I started in 2016, which seems like an awfully long time ago, but it's gone quite fast. I will always admit, in my first year, I lost money. I lost money due to mistakes, due to not enough knowledge, and just due to outside influences changing my perspective on things. I think the first way to always learn is by practice. And luckily, almost all trading apps have what we call a demo mode, which is where you get given X amount of money, and you can start investing in that way. And any mistakes you're going to make that you will learn from, because you do learn from your mistakes when you're in the market. So any mistakes you do make, it's made with money that you're not going to lose. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing is just YouTube videos, research. You just type in how to invest. It can expand your knowledge quite a bit. And the third thing is by talking to people like myself. Or if you know anyone else, talk to them. Talk to people who are in the market or who are in the long time, that is. The stock market seems to be quite a trend this year, where every Tom, Dick and Harry seems to be investing / trading, and seems to become a guru overnight. But talk to somebody who's been in there for a long time, because they've definitely learned a lot from their mistakes. So I think that's everything. But I've also got, if you can see it in the Facebook comments, my 2 Instagram pages. In there, what I generally post are stocks that I think are going to do well in 5-10 years time. So these are not stocks that will make you rich overnight. If you want to get rich overnight, when the local casino is open, but the stock market is not a place to get rich overnight when you're investing. So hopefully that answers the question. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. And there's a couple more for you, Ibrahim. So one is, what is your opinion on robo traders such as Wealthsimple or Nutmeg?
Right, and the next one.
And the other one is, this is from Baljinder. So in order to buy any sort of shares, what sort of account do they need? Do they need some sort of special account?
Well, I'll go for the easy question first, which was the latter one. So when you open one of these investing apps, such as eToro or Trading 212 or Free Trade, which are the most popular ones, as I said, you get an option for a demo mode, which all you need is an email address. However, if you want to open an actual account, what you need is, again, your email, but some sort of verification, which is generally your passport or some form of ID, just so they know you're a legal individual. And that's all you generally need, and some money, of course. Most accounts have a deposit amount of about £50 to £100 in these eToro or in Trading 212. But in some of the more well-known accounts, well-known platforms, they do require a higher amount of deposit. And the second or the first question, robo traders, I'm going to admit I'm not too informed on robo traders. That's one of the beauty of investing. Things change on a monthly, yearly basis, with new terms or new ways of investing, and keeping up to date is of paramount importance. So I myself, after this finishes, I'll be doing searching straight away. I've been posting on my Instagram what I've learned. So unfortunately, I cannot answer the first question, so I do apologize for that. But when I do find out, I'll be sure to do another video on this, hopefully, if I'm allowed to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all the questions that I've been able to see so far. If anyone has any further questions, just put them in the comments, and we'll make sure they get to Sarah and Ibrahim, and hopefully they'll be able to answer them for you. Just before we go, I just want to remind everyone that as the services that we provide in the seminars are totally free, all we want in return is some high quality feedback, things that we can reflect on, things that we can use for our portfolios and interviews. Those of you in the medical profession will know how important this is. And the form that will be posted in the comments will be open for a good few days after this video is posted. So if you're watching on catch up or a couple of days later, please still take 5 minutes out and just fill out a feedback form for us. We'd really appreciate it. Okay, so I believe that is all. So thank you very much to both of our speakers, Dr. Sarah Asher and Ibrahim Hussain, both very, very informative. And that's it.